What is up, car and tech fans? Welcome back to a very exciting garage tinkering video, because today I get to share with you the ultimate gauge board that a lot of you have ordered and are going to be winging their way over to you in the next few weeks. Plus, we get to take a look at the screen I've had developed with it, and you'll maybe understand why I've done that too. You see, since the last video where we took a look at the board and the screen and their specifications, a couple of things have changed ever so slightly, but I think it's the right choice. And by the end of this video, you'll know why I think it's the right choice. And hopefully you're all going to agree with me. So here it is, version 1.1 of my ultimate gauge board. And this one actually has the power protection module attached to it, which allows you to plug this thing straight into a car battery. But we're not going to look at the board in any detail now. It's going to take too much time. We're going to do a dedicated video about that in 2 weeks' time with Matt Kaiser of Kaiser Engineering, who I've partnered with to do the hardware design side of all of this, because he's very, very good at it. And we'll go through that in a bit more detail with him in a couple of weeks. Overall, the functionality that this board provides outside of the example specification that we did when we looked at it in its like theoretical KiCad format is roughly the same, but we made a few changes that made it more accessible, have better connectivity, and was actually better prepared for the screen because they had their own requirements which the boards weren't prepared for. Powering the whole thing, we have this ESP32 S3 Room 1U N8R8, which means we've got 8 megapps RAM on there, which should be perfectly good for making gauges in a car and making sure that you've still got sufficient space on there in the RAM in order to, put all the elements and components that you want. Obviously, you need to upload your code to the screen, and so we've integrated this vertical USB-C connector. So if it's in an enclosure or a pod gauge or wherever, you can actually access the port still without having to remove everything from the enclosure. It's going to make connectivity and life a lot easier. And instead of just having the single power and canvas input, there are two. You can use either one of them, they're both interchangeable, but the idea is here that these can be daisy chained. So if you're putting power into the board from the power regulator that we've designed or from any external power source, you can then pull out the power and the canvas from the board and daisy chain it into more boards. So, if you're putting 3 next to each other, they don't all have to have power regulators. You can just do it the once and then pass that safe 5-volt signal on to the other boards. Like I say, we do connect both power and canvas here, and one of the biggest advantages of this over, say, a similar looking board like a Waveshare 2.1 inch touchscreen is that this has a built-in CAN transceiver. So there's no need to go out and get an external module that allows you to connect to canvas. You can literally just take your differential pair of wires, connect them straight into the board, and you're going to be good to go. On the subject of power, the backlight regulation and pulse width modulation that allows us to dim the screen had to change. You see, when you use a normal screen that you buy anywhere, they're 3.3 volts typically for the backlight. Our screens are not typical. They require 6.4-ish volts at about 80 milliamps. So a standard LCD driver board can't power them, can't generate enough voltage to get the backlight to turn on. So the MOSFET that we had on there that was originally used just to limit the voltage and allow us to dim the screen has been replaced with this AP3031 switching boost regulator, which actually allows us to take the 5-volt signal and increase it ever so slightly to the 6.4 at 80 milliamps that is required for the powering of these screens. It's obviously all set up to allow us to still dim the screens down where we want. It all works great. I'm very happy with how this setup works. And most importantly, you can still use a non-special screen that runs off 3.3 volts with this board. So if you've got a bigger screen or a different screen or something else you want to use, they are still compatible. As far as the outputs go, we made a couple of small changes just to make them a little bit more usable. We did have 4 addressable pins that you could access to the extension module. Instead of curving them around to the outside of the board for aesthetic reasons, we put them in a straight line in a 2.54 configuration. So if you want to use a standard 2.54 pin header or socket header, you can just solder that straight onto the board and you're good to go, dropping your whatever devices you want into the board. Similarly, it has a dedicated I2C connection, which is in the same 2.54 footprint. So again, you can put on whatever socket or header you might want for your I2C devices. Obviously, finally, we have our LCD connector. It's still a 40 pin. The pin outs are the same. No real changes there. Touch is available, even though the screens that I've had produced don't have touch, but all the functionality you would expect in a 40-pin RGB connector are actually in there. So no matter what size screen you put in there, obviously within the limits of what an S3 can handle, it likes up to a maximum of about 800 by 480 resolution. You should be good to go. Obviously, the board is awash with capacitors and resistors and things for heat dissipation, and just making sure that these things are going to survive in a world of different automotive climates. Apparently, some of you live in hellscapes, and I've had to consider that. The boards have been produced and constructed for me by the sponsor of this video, PCBWay, who I've been working with for about 9 months now across many projects on this channel, and I'm super happy with the quality that they're producing on these boards. I know you are going to be too. They've honestly been a fantastic partner to work with, and as someone who is such a stickler for quality assurance and perfectionism in things that they produce, it's great to partner with a company like PCBWay who can satisfy my very high standards. If you're looking at getting your own set of boards produced, then if you use the link in my description and go over to PCBWay, you can get $5 off your first set of boards. And if you're just getting some basic boards made, then they're only $5 anyway. So you're effectively just going to pay for the postage. You can't say much fairer than that. So yeah, thanks again to PCBWay for helping make this happen. Honestly, couldn't have done this without you. Like I say, compared to what we looked at last time, they are small changes. But they are small iterative improvements that have been required for the ever so slight change in the hardware when it comes to the screens. The screens is where I had to make an executive decision after some testing about what would actually work best for 99% of people who are going to put these in their cars. And so let's actually take a look at these boards running, and then you'll get a better feel for why I've made the decisions that I have. Purely for comparative reasons, this is version 1.0 of my board. It has a pretty standard ST7701 RGB screen, the kind that you get off AliExpress. It's got a brightness of about 300 nits or 300 candelas per meter squared, depending which unit you prefer, the same. This setup has always been sufficient. But when I actually had it out in the car, the big issue was brightness and not being able to see things on the screen, especially when you had light pass over the screen. So I thought that the solution to fix this problem would be to have the screen have anti-glare and to increase the brightness a little bit. But did you know that anti-glare comes in a variety of different flavors? Obviously, most of these screens come in standard reflective gloss, but there's gloss anti-glare, there's matte anti-glare, there's sunlight readable. There's this whole different host of anti-glare solutions. Prior to doing any tests, I was under the impression that matte anti-glare was going to be the best one. Because, yes, you kind of remove hot spots of reflectivity, but what it then does is dampen that brightness out over the entire screen. So instead of having like a segment of the screen temporarily have a bright hot spot as the sun passes over, that bloom gets dissipated over the entire screen. And then if the brightness isn't there to back it up, you kill your ability to see anything. It actually isn't the improvement that I thought it would be. And the second reason is a lot of you have spoken about wanting to use these gauges as accessory gauges along with other bigger screens. That's what I'm doing. I'm using 3 P4 touchscreens in like the big gauges in front of me and then 3 of these smaller gauges around me. And by having the small ones matte anti-glare and the big ones not anti-glare, it's very noticeable and it feels very inconsistent. It becomes obvious that they're from different sources. It's not a good look. So in discovering this, I had to find an answer to the solution that allowed us to be able to read these screens in any environment with the sun and reflections and glare and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, that is very possible. So I've had some different screens produced, and these are very high brightness, very high contrast, daylight readable or, sunlight readable, 6.4 volt backlight with a high range of temperature resistances. So it doesn't matter if you live somewhere really cold or really hot, they should survive it. But talking about it is one thing. What does that look like in practice? How does that actually compare to a standard 2.1 inch screen? And on both of these screens, we're going to show the same demonstration at the same max 100% brightness. And you're going to see why I've made the decisions that I have. You should see straight away how much better the brightness and the readability is on this screen on the right. Instead of having a brightness of around 300 nits, we've upped it all the way up to 1000, which is about as high as you're able to actually go on one of these screens without having real considerations about heat. The contrast has been massively boosted up to 1000 to 1. And as you can see in this like dark environment, which we're in now, the brightness is way, way better. I will admit, I don't think we capture the difference quite as well in video as we do in real life. It's difficult not to allow the camera to blow out, but the difference is very noticeable. So this is like a comparison in a nighttime view. If we bring in the sunlight and simulate the day, even with a decent amount of light, this thing is still considerably noticeably better. And this is really this scenario where I think it comes into its own during the day, because that increased brightness, that increased contrast, and that daylight readable treatment means that it is perfectly set up for being an automotive screen and still not looking out of place with all your other screens, because it's not like one muted looking screen and then a bunch of different shiny ones. On that, let's take a look at the sunshine coming directly behind the screen. Yes, you are going to get some reflections, but this is a problem that exists in every single gauge in every single car in the world. It's why most dashboards and most pod gauges have a hood. They're trying to protect the screen from direct sunlight, but there are still going to be instances where the light passes over it. You know, the majority of the inside of your car is in shade most of the time, but when the sunlight does pass over it, it doesn't reduce the visibility of the screen to the point where you can't see what's going on it. When you compare it to the regular brightness, it completely blows out, whereas we now don't have that problem because the brightness and the contrast and the daylight readability of it overpower the sun. All in all, you end up with a screen that not only will most likely feel more cohesive with everything else that is OEM on the inside of your car, but if you're also thinking of adding other screens, be they P4s or something else larger, a big square screen, whatever it might be, they're likely to look reasonably similar, and you're going to have better cohesion with all of your screens throughout the interior of the car. And I think that is another important point to consider outside of the functionality of one screen in isolation. So that's the new screens. I'm super happy with how this stuff has come out, and I think you are all going to be too. And hopefully you all understand why I've made those couple of small executive decisions to change things a little bit. I believe we've ended up with a superior end product. And you know what? If you really do want anti-glare, there's no reason why you can't anti-glare treat these screens and your other screens as well with a anti-glare film. Then all of your screens will at least feel consistent with the same anti-glare. That's probably actually a better way of achieving that if that is something you really require. One final thing I would like to show you is the power protection board running and the daisy chain running. Over here we have an input, and this is a 12-ish volt simulated input, which is going into my power protection board, which is then outputting from the power protection board to screen A, which can then daisy chain off to screen B and screen C. And we can see all three successfully powered and running using just that single input. We ensured sufficient voltage and current passed through this circuit to run them in series, making your life a lot easier when you want to add multiple of these into your system. You should be able to daisy chain at least 5 with no problem. All in all, considering this is the first automotive specific product that I've ever designed, I'm insanely proud of how these things have come out. And I think once I progress a bit further with the open source software that I'm providing for these to get them up and running, that you can contribute to and start to build on the functionality, the design, all that kind of stuff, it's going to be very, very cool. And I cannot wait to see the kind of stuff that you guys produce with them. Obviously, I know a lot of you are waiting on these now, and the wait is almost over. The boards are being produced as we speak. The screens are being produced as we speak. I'm expecting them sometime in the next couple of weeks, at which point I have a lot of boxes ready to go. I've got to package everything up and send it off to everybody. But I estimated August. Still looks like it's going to be August, so not long to wait. I will obviously update everybody who's ordered them with tracking info as and when they ship. And if seeing this has made you go, oh no, I didn't order any, and I probably should have done, I ordered a few too many, not many. There's under 40 left, I think. They are available from garagetinkering.com. There is a link below in the description. When this first round is gone, they're gone. There will probably be a second round once, I've got some feedback from people and we make some changes and improvements for a next iteration, but it probably won't be for a few months. So if you do want to get hold of this first batch, I wouldn't hang around if I were you. So that's it. That's the new stuff that's going to be winging its way to a lot of you very shortly. If you've got any questions about them, feel free to stick them in the comments. Otherwise, I'd love for you to tell me what car you're thinking of putting these into. We seem to have an insane range of different things. And it's really interesting to hear what kind of project cars they're going to go into, because some of you are working on some really cool stuff. Anyway, that's it for this one. I hope that something good happens to you today, and I'll see you next week, Wednesday at 2 p.m. Take it easy, peeps. Bye-bye.